We tend to think of loneliness as just a feeling, right? Some kind of unpleasant sadness that eventually passes. But what if it's not? What if it's actually a neurological condition as real and as damaging as a physical injury? Today, we are going deep into the science, the frankly terrifying science of what happens when your brain is literally starved of human contact.
So let's ask the big question right up front. What happens when you're truly, completely alone? I mean, zero social contact. No conversations, no eye contact, not even another person in the room. Let's really dive into this, because modern neuroscience shows us it's not some peaceful retreat. For your brain, it's a biological emergency.
And this quote, this just cuts right to the heart of it. That word starving isn't just a clever metaphor. It's a literal description of a neurological state. Your brain, which is the most social organ in your body, begins to crave connection in the exact same way your stomach craves food. The stakes get incredibly high right from day one. And that's because, from your brain's point of view, loneliness isn't sadness. It's a mortal threat. A lack of social contact triggers the very same neural pathways that light up for physical pain and for hunger. Neurologically speaking, it's a full-blown survival crisis.
So, this brings us to a really core concept here: social hunger. It's a term that comes from neuroscientists at MIT, a team led by Dr. Rebecca Sachs. And what they found is just staggering. After only 10 hours of isolation, the dopamine neurons in a part of your brain called the substantia nigra, the same ones that scream for food when you're starving, they start firing, demanding social interaction. It's not a luxury, it's a biological necessity.
Okay, so let's break down what happens in those first moments. The brain doesn't just, ease into isolation. It panics. Within just a single day, a whole cascade of emergency signals starts firing off, and they fundamentally change your brain chemistry.
And this just lays out that whole cascade perfectly. First, that social hunger we just talked about kicks in. Then your stress hormone, cortisol, just floods your system. After that, your amygdala, the brain's fear center, goes into overdrive, putting you on high alert for threats that aren't even there. And finally, your sleep falls apart. Without social cues to anchor it, your REM cycles fragment and your dreams become bizarrely intense as your brain desperately tries to simulate the social world it's lost.
Now, after that initial 24-hour shock, you'd think the brain might adapt, but it doesn't. Instead, it begins a downward spiral. We start to shift from temporary chemical imbalances to serious functional problems, and eventually, to actual physical damage to the brain's structure.
And what's really wild is just how quickly your higher cognitive functions start to degrade. Within a single week, activity in your prefrontal cortex drops off a cliff. Your working memory, your attention span, your ability to make decisions, all of it gets worse. Your hippocampus, which actually uses social cues to track time, gets completely lost. You literally start to lose your grip on the passing of hours and days.
And this is where things get really eerie. Your brain gets so starved for social data that it just starts making it up. Now, we're not talking about full-blown visions. It's more subtle. You might hear your name being called in an empty house. You might feel a presence in the room with you. That's your brain's social circuits firing into a void, basically creating ghosts out of the silence.
This slide just puts it in such stark contrast. I mean, look at the difference. A connected brain has stable cognitive function, it has a solid sense of self. But the isolated brain? We see a rapid decline in memory, a warped sense of time, and maybe strangest of all, a fragmenting sense of identity. Without the mirror of other people to reflect who you are, the very concept of you starts to dissolve.
Okay, let's all take a deep breath here, because we're now moving from how the brain functions to how it physically changes. After about a month of complete isolation, MRI scans show that key parts of the brain literally decrease in volume. It's not just malfunctioning, it is physically shrinking. So let's just walk through this damage piece by piece. First, the prefrontal cortex, your center for reason. It shrinks. At the same time, the hippocampus, which is crucial for memory, also loses gray matter. The white matter, the actual wiring connecting different brain regions, starts to degrade. Your thoughts literally slow down. And maybe most critically, neurogenesis, the birth of new brain cells, it just grinds to a halt. Your brain isn't just lonely, it's actively losing its ability to learn, adapt, and grow. So now we have to talk about the most serious consequences. After months of this neural starvation, some of this damage can become irreversible. We're now entering territory where the person who goes into isolation is simply not the same person who comes out.
This is such a profound shift. We're not just talking about cognitive problems anymore. Studies of people in long-term isolation show dramatic changes in their core personality. Neuroticism and paranoia just skyrocket. Meanwhile, traits like openness, conscientiousness, and agreeableness completely plummet. The very foundation of who you are is rewired.
This table really just lays out the grim reality in clinical terms. Just look at that column on the right. The damage to the hippocampus and the white matter, often permanent. Your brain's reward system can become so damaged it leads to something called anhedonia. I mean, just think about that. The inability to feel any pleasure. And your empathy circuits, your emotional regulation, they can be disrupted for life. And even when the isolation finally ends, the effects linger. It's a condition neuroscientists call post-isolation syndrome. The brain has been so fundamentally changed that normal social life becomes overwhelming, even painful. These individuals are often left with persistent anxiety, emotional numbness, and they find it incredibly hard to form new attachments. The prison stays with you long after the doors are open.
So this brings us to a really crucial and uncomfortable ethical question that this science is forcing us to confront. If an act predictably causes measurable, permanent neurological injury, can we really call it anything other than torture? This research has profound implications for practices like solitary confinement in prisons.
But is there any hope? Can the brain actually heal from this kind of damage? Well, the answer is yes, but there is a road to recovery, and it depends almost entirely on one single factor: time.
This chart just makes it painfully, visually clear. After short-term isolation, we're talking days or weeks, the brain's amazing plasticity allows for an almost complete recovery. But after a few months, that prognosis drops to about 50-50. And after years of isolation, the potential for recovery is minimal. The damage is just too extensive. It really underscores the urgency of getting someone's social contact.
And this brings us to the key insight of this entire explainer. Social interaction isn't just a vitamin for the brain, it's a structural component. It's like this: your muscles atrophy without exercise. In the exact same way, your social brain regions atrophy without interaction. Connection is what literally keeps the brain physically intact.
Now, here is the most hopeful takeaway from all of this research. You don't need a huge, bustling social life to stay healthy. It turns out that even small, consistent doses of social contact, a phone call, a quick chat with a cashier, even just interacting with a pet, can activate enough of your social circuitry to prevent the worst of this damage from happening.
So to bring it all together, what have we seen? When the brain is cut off from other people, it doesn't just get sad. Its structures shrink, its abilities decline, its very personality dissolves. In a very real sense, it's a slow cellular death.
If you take just one thing away from all of this, let it be this: the next time you think about loneliness, don't picture a sad feeling. Picture a starving brain. Picture a medical emergency that is actively causing physical brain damage.
Look, this isn't just some abstract scientific finding. It's a call to action. We are all wired for connection, and every single one of us has the power to provide that essential nutrient to someone else. So make that call, send that text, reach out. Your brain and theirs depends on it.